This video is a one big hot take on Final Fantasy XIV main gameplay systems. Over the years, my excitement for new content in the game sadly dwindled. Please keep in mind that this is just an opinion of one person, and this is how I feel about the direction that the game is taking. I will go over core gameplay, savage raiding, alliance raids, dungeons, and gearing up. I started playing Final Fantasy XIV in 2017 during the Stormblood expansion. I was looking for something fresh at the time, and when I looked at Final Fantasy XIV, I thought character models looked cool, and I didn't mind slow gameplay during A Realm Reborn. I decided to buy a full game after hitting level cap. That was I think level 35 at the time, and carried on leveling through MSQ. The game got interesting during my tab in Heavensward, and halfway through Stormblood I started skipping some cutscenes because I just found it so boring. But I didn't care about that. I wanted to see what the endgame is like. You should know that I'm not kind of person who enjoys doing endgame in MMOs, including parsing, but plays primarily for fun. What I mean by that is, I'm completely fine with purple parses. I have no interest or motivation to parse higher than, let's say, 80%. I am pulling my weight and not tryharding too much. That said, I really enjoyed doing my first raid tier in Alphascape. Everything was really fun and engaging, from killing chaos to the final Omega fight. I was playing a Paladin at the time, and all tanks had two stances. In Paladin's case, damage stance Sword Oath and tank stance Shield Oath. The majority of Paladin's damage came from Sword Oath alone, but sometimes you had to do a tank swap. Go on Shield Oath for the amount of GCDs that was comfortable for you, and swap back to the Sword Oath. It felt good because there was some interesting decision making in play. Adding to that is the fact that DPS also had to do enmity control, and some jobs were actually better at it than others. One of Dragoon's characteristics was that he could do his iconic backflip and actively reduce his enmity, and I think Ninja had something in his kit to help with that as well. Shadowbringers releases and removes DPS tank stances as a necessity for enmity management. Tank jobs are even more alike, basically being the same thing with a slightly different flavor. If you know how to play one, you will learn how to play the other in about 30 minutes. This stuff is not complicated at all. That's why I became an Omni-tank very quickly, because I got bored playing Paladin pull after pull after pull. I'm glad I got to experience the feel of classes in Stormblood, be it not massively different from Shadowbringers, but still having more fleshed out and unique identities. It is important in an MMO, and I'm bringing it up because now in patch 6.1 they are removing one of the most iconic samurai abilities from the game, Hisatsu Kaiten, in order to quote-unquote remove button bloat. And I thought this is the best time for me to make this video and express my biggest frustrations with Final Fantasy XIV combat and my fear for the future of this game. First, I found the combat in Final Fantasy XIV non-dynamic. Dynamic. Characterized by constant change, activity, or progress. When you begin a boss encounter in Final Fantasy XIV, take for example Savage, your rotation and the boss's moves are practically predetermined, with some minor exceptions in jobs with proc abilities. You do a countdown, pull, and execute your static rotation that you memorized before, and every pull plays out the same way as before. There is no random element to these fights. A boss might, however, change the order of two mechanics, but that's about it. So naturally you might ask, so when does the job rotation actually change? Every job gets updated at the release of the new expansion. That's 2, sometimes 2.5 years. I hope you started to follow my logic when it comes to non-dynamic gameplay, but there are more issues to this. As I said already, I'm an Omni-tank. I play all tanks because due to the tank role streamlining, I get bored playing one. I tanked the entirety of Eden's Verse and Shadowbringers on autopilot, maybe except for the second phase of Shiva. What happened to the job's unique abilities and identities? I miss Dark Arts and Abyssal Drain. I miss all tank stances. Reprisal was unique to Dark Knights. It made them a little bit more special. So is Low Blow. Where's Blood Prince and the gimmick of old raw intuition? Even DPS like monks don't even need to build up their skill speed anymore. It's just always there. Like I said, tanks feel so similar to me these days that it's hard for me to get excited to fight anything. I know they want to make the game more accessible, but if you ask me, I think they have gotten too far. Let's move on to my second point. Every extreme trial and savage fight in Final Fantasy is a square or a circle platform. Let's not just claim that it's good, because it's always been like that. And if you are to make that statement, you will be wrong because of two reasons. One, in the past they actually made these classic MMO raids in the form of Coils of Bahamut and Alexander. 13 different encounters and coils with unique environments in every turn, and 12 Alexander fights. And ever since Stormblood it's all square platform, circle, square platform, circle. 4 raid fights in the same tier often don't even have a unique theme tying them together. Couple of days ago on my stream I literally forgot the first 2 fights of the current tier. But I don't even remember the second fight, like what was the second fight of this tier? I did it, I cleared it. What was even the first one? What was it? Dude, I cannot even remember. First one is Jailer. Oh yeah, the Jailer, yeah. 2. Alliance raids exist. These have been in the game since 2013, and Square Enix never stopped making them. These giant raids always have a unique theme, bosses and mechanics. The only issue is that they are painfully easy and the only reason to do them is to get the coin, which you can use to upgrade your actual raiding gear by 10 item levels. Such a waste. Hear me out. This is what I propose. The roles of Alliance raids and today's Savage needs to be switched. Remove 2 difficulties from normal raids and add Savage difficulty to the Alliance raids. Downscale it to 8 men if you want, and design appropriately. It will make each raid tier much more memorable. I mean, look at this. This is the newly released Alliance raid. Here, you're fighting in the clouds against the 12 themselves. Look at this fight on the hand of a giant statue of Ralgar, with mechanics that actually involve the fingers of a giant stone hand. There are many more examples like this, but this is much more memorable than circles and squares. They even made a 48-man Alliance raid in Shadowbringers, in form of the Lubrum Regine Savage. I participated in it, and it was honestly one of the best raiding experiences I've had in Final Fantasy XIV. I used to play World of Warcraft back in the day, and 13 years later I still remember my time in Icecrown Citadel. And it wasn't the bosses or mechanics that I remember necessarily, it's the entrance halls with the Tyrion doing motivational speech. It's the elevator ride after Lady Deathwhisper. It's the pathway to the airship battle. It's the main halls of Icecrown and so on and so forth. This is an immersive experience that Final Fantasy no longer provides. And my third point. The lack of mid-core content. There is a huge empty gap between the difficulties of the latest dungeon and the current Savage tier. The dungeons are really easy and Savages require a decent effort. What if a player wants to engage in a content that does not require the scheduling or difficulties of Savage, but also does not want to go through a steamroll such as Expert Roulette? Well, there is nothing here for you. In the past, you can go and do a run of a deep dungeon. If you run it with a group, it's a decent mid-core challenge. There are even some items that are still expensive on the market board to this day, that you can get from these dungeons. Or you could try a solo run to try for a Necromancer/Lone Hero titles, which if you ask me the most hardcore thing there is. I mean, I did it, I'm a lone hero, here is me on the leaderboards. It's gotten so bad that the Shadowbringers expansion did not include a deep dungeon at all. Getting gear in Final Fantasy also feels underwhelming to me. It only increases your numbers. Unless the new piece of Savage gear looks cool, I am not motivated to get it. I am not getting any new fun abilities or procs. It's just an eye level increase and makes your parts better. There is zero difference in gameplay between a 580 item level player and a 600 item level player. But I'll admit, this is not a big deal to me. And at the end of the video, I just want to say that despite the fact that I'm rapidly losing interest in the combat and the endgame of Final Fantasy XIV, I love everything else about it. The character models, although a bit outdated, I still think look great. They have very expressive faces, tons of emotes to play around with. I think the game looks good in general, I like the aesthetics of it. I love the glamour system and how the gear looks on my character. And let's not forget the housing and the screenshot community in this game. I feel like when people quit this game, they quit quietly, without making a fuss about it and not voicing their problems they have with the game. Be it maybe because they are afraid of the reception or don't fully understand why they lost interest. For now, thanks for watching. Subscribe, follow me on Twitch, and see you next time.